Robert Scoble. So who are you?
I'm Robert Scoble. Well, I already said I study startups and the future.
And where did that sort of way to start off? You like every interview that you start off, often you start off with the line, "Who are you?" and that style. So how did that evolve over time? And
Laziness.
Laziness? You just wanted to get it going?
No, I worked at Microsoft and we started a thing called Channel 9 back then. And it started out, it's back like almost a decade ago now. So, but we noticed that everybody hated Microsoft. We'd go to conferences and people, we'd go partying with people and they would say, "Man, you guys are nicer than we expected." What do you mean by that? Well, Microsoft people are assholes. and Microsoft is a rapacious, shitty company, and we're like, whoa. Well, how do we change that attitude around people, right? So I was sitting with an engineer who built what now is Silverlight, and he was showing me this cool technology that he built, and I was like, why can't we just put this online with, the new video technology that's emerging? I don't even think YouTube was out yet, but there was a few players that were letting people put videos up on YouTube, and the quality was getting good enough that you could watch, a half an hour of video. And I was recording a tape back then, and I was lazy. And so I didn't write down people's names on the tapes. And so after a week, I'd have a stack of tapes, and I'd be like, uh-oh. and then I'd be watching the video, and I'd go, who the hell is this?
It's right there, right in the first 2 or 3 seconds.
I started figuring out, you better get the person to say their name at the beginning of the video so you can figure it out, and it just became a shtick that I kept doing.
So, there was an article, I have the guy's name written down here, but there was a blog post about everybody needs a Robert Scoble. And I'm sure you've had it quoted, Mark Felt, and he talked about, he showed a graph of Rackspace stock value before he joined the company, and it increased by 400% afterwards. Now, there are other factors, but here's my point, and also,
I love how I can take the credit for 5,000 people's work,
No, I know, but I think in this instance, please speak to the Canadian audience. In one of our meetings today, we heard about sort of the lack of marketing, and I think generally, if you look at sort of what the investor is willing to invest in, so maybe speak about. You don't have to take credit for 5,000 people, but the fact is that the work that you do puts Rackspace on the map.
I'm doing branding and strategy. I'm doing a lot of things that I usually don't talk about for audiences. A lot of it's sort of like Red Bull. Why does Red Bull sell $2 billion a year, the shittiest product the world's ever seen? It is, right?
Well, it's good with tequila.
Does anybody want? It's not really good with tequila. If I took you back in time 10 years ago and put some of that shit in your tequila, you'd be going, what the heck did you do?
That's 10 years ago.
So, if you're selling the world, and this is actually one of the interview questions at Microsoft was something like, how would you upsell ice to Eskimos? It's like, oh, that's a marketing question. But Red Bull figured it out. How do you sell a crappy product to $2 billion worth of it a year? You have to not talk about the product. They don't talk about the product. They don't talk about the sugar content or the caffeine content. They say it gives you wings, but so they hint at it has caffeine and sugar in it. But really, there's nothing beneficial in the product to talk. You can't talk about the product, the way you can a health drink or something.
Mm-hmm.
So they put their brand on gods in our society. And I saw one of the gods close up, Valentino Rossi. He was won more MotoGP races than anybody else, and he kicked 5 girls out of his room, and all 5 were crying. And I said, I do not have a life experience like that. He's a god in our society. And Red Bull tied their brand to sex without ever using sex through the use of God. So they hired Felix Baumgartner to jump out of a spaceship, right? or they put their brand on people who are surfing 60-foot waves. They're gods in our society. And so when you want to be a god tonight, buy a little Red Bull, right? And put it in your tequila or your vodka.
That sounds like, what we heard about social media when it first came out. Right? I mean, we need to adjust. Right? Is this different than social media? Is it, certainly,
it's the next level. It's the next level of
yeah.
mobile and social media and Internet of Things that are really going to surveil us, stalk us in a new way. Look at credit cards. If we went back 30 years ago and told people at an audience like this, well, thank you.
Yeah.
If we said, we're going to give all of our private data, like whether you buy cookies or not, to the bank, and the bank is going to use that and make your life better, and you would go, hell no. But now we all have credit cards. Right? Anybody not have a credit card here? There's usually one or two people who are like, I'm off the grid.
We'll go back to the Bitcoin for that.
That proves that the privacy line, the freaky line moves over time, right? And if the utility comes, that I think will come, we're going to go to that always surveilled world, and we'll happily go there. And here's why. I use a thing called TripIt on my iPhone, and I have since the early days. I think I give it my credit card. I give it access to my email, right? So here's a company that gets to look in my email and see patterns in my email. God knows what else they're looking at down there when I give them access to Gmail. Because I give them access to Gmail, they have access to it. Look around for my plane tickets, right? So they look for my plane tickets and pull that data out and do stuff with it. And I was sitting in a plane in Chicago. We were just about to leave the gate, and TripIt said, your flight's being canceled. Here's another flight out of town tonight. Click, bought the ticket. 2 minutes later, the pilot comes on and said, sorry, our flight is being canceled due to mechanical troubles. And when you get inside the gate, our customer service people will help you. Turns out there's 100-something people on the plane. There was 3 seats on that plane that night. So I won the game of life because I gave away my privacy to this system, and this system helped me live my life. And that is going to happen over and over and over in this new world. That the car, Mercedes just announced a contextual car.
Right.
It's going to do things and save you friction in your car. Because it's going to know your favorite gas station. It's going to know it's going to know when you go to church or strip clubs, right? It's going to know...
or both.
Or both. Which is a really interesting privacy problem, right? Let's talk about that privacy problem. Well, you were wearing this thing on your head, right? I was wearing a similar thing, a galvanic skin response sensor. It costs $200, and it's going to be $50 in a year. According to the founder. And I was giving a talk at the next web conference, and the guy who invented it was watching my nervous system in real time on his iPhone. And he came out, after 15 minutes, I had him come out on stage and talk about what I was wearing. And he said, oh, man, you were really nervous when you started out, which is normal. And calm down. And then we started talking about what this means. And it was in Amsterdam, and we started talking about the red light district in Amsterdam, and it spiked up, and I'm like, oh shit. There's a new privacy problem. The Google Glass has an eye sensor. Well, what does a cop do when they pull you over? They go, hey, can you follow my finger? And just by watching your eyes, they know if you're sober or drunk, right? Who gets that information? Does my insurance company get that information? And the problem with privacy is there's going to be discrimination. Based on your behavior, based on your choices. If I buy those Oreos cookies, my insurance company might charge me another $1, right? Because they know that I've increased my risk a little bit.
That's right. So several times during the presentation, and when you sort of use the proverbial they, we give them our information, we give the system our information. But really, what you're talking about is giving corporations like.
Lots of people here in this audience.
Yeah.
We're building apps. I have 300 apps on my iPhone.
Right.
They all get data.
Right. But we're talking about a half a dozen corporations that are going to have really the entire life data print of a lot of people. Right.
If you go to google.com/privacy, you get to see, they show you in real time all the data they have on you. It's scary. Actually, that's
So the follow-up question, sorry, I don't want to, I just want to get this in, you can, but, so does government have to play a new role?
yeah.
You know, I mean, perhaps there's a contrast between Canada and the United States there as well.
When I had dinner with the CTO of Ford, he said, you know, this new Tesla thing really scares the hell out of him and scares the hell out of his customers. He said, you know, our customer is Joey Bag of Donuts, NASCAR fan, and they don't want Ford to know that they're going to the strip club or doing donuts in the parking lot, right? Like the Tesla does. The Tesla knows that.
Right.
And so they're like, we are going to be forced to go into this new world because Tesla is really changing the world of what it means to have a car. So we're going to be forced to go there too, but we're really concerned about this freaky line. And
right.
most of our customers are over here, and they have not yet gone over the freaky line. And I said, well, there's three things a corporation has to do to earn our trust in this new always surveilled world. One, be transparent about what you're collecting on us. And Google's a good example of that. Google's doing a pretty good job of being transparent. They show you what they're collecting on you. Two, make it correctable. And Google does not do this yet. And it is okay with Google, but some of these personal digital assistants like Google Now, one of them kept giving me golf tips and telling me about golf lessons because I live on a golf course.
All right.
And so the system, the sensor reading was saying, hey, you live on a golf course, so we should show you golf stuff, right? You must love golf because you live on a golf course. No, I hate golf. I don't want to know anything about golf. I never want to play golf, and stop showing me golf stuff. But I couldn't correct the data, so it made me less trusting of that company, right? You know, can you correct the sensor readings to serve me better? Can I tell ads to shut up after I bought a product? No, not yet. You know, we all see it. People, even at Rackspace, we're retargeting you. You know, we're using these retargeting systems. So if you come to Rackspace.com and then you go somewhere else, there's another Rackspace ad, and it bothers you. It bothers me, but it works.
And all of those aspects are really product development initiatives, and so. But when it comes to ownership of data, ownership of your life,
but it's
print.
ownership of trust.
Yeah.
So
it's going to be based in trust.
We're going to go in this world, but we're going to choose the brands that treat us right, and the brands that don't treat us right, we're going to ask our government to go beat the hell out of them, right? Bitcoin. We were just over Bitcoin today.
Decentral, yeah.
Decentral, and we're talking about $400 million disappearing. That guy should go to jail.
Right.
He did not build a system that was trustworthy, and trustworthy there is not screwing up my Instagram photo. It's stealing my money. That's criminal,
right?
And can't be allowed, right? So trust is three things, and then can I turn it off? So my wife wears this Fitbit thing, and if you think about it, it's an accelerometer on a clock. What do we do in the middle of the night sometimes? Fitbit knows. Maybe I don't want it to know. So can I tell Fitbit, hey, for the next 3 hours or so, just stop studying.
3 hours, huh?
5 minutes? I don't know.
How long you been here?
11 years. There's a reason. But can you turn it off, or can you control it? The guy who builds my jackets, not this jacket, but my Scotty Vest jackets, it has 30 pockets in it. He's already built a pocket that blocks transmission of RFID and even over your cell phone. It's a Faraday cage kind of thing. And I told that story in front of Maker Faire in New York, and in the front row, a kid said, "I already built my own." So the kids are already figuring out how to hack this world of always surveilled world. Right? They know they're already being always surveilled world. Did you know when you buy, if you're in New York, I don't know about here, but you have to buy an RFID thing for going through the tunnels to build the tunnel. And in San Francisco, they're even worse. They're just taking a picture of our license plate and sending us the bill.
Yeah, 407 is a highway here that takes a photo of every car.
But the RFID, you know, you might think, well, they're only using it to charge you when you go through the tunnel. Some hacker actually figured out they're pinging that RFID all through town. So you know, is that data gonna end up in a court somewhere if you're a drug dealer? Of course it will. And if you get a divorce because you're cheating on your wife and you're in the wrong place, is that gonna show up in some suit? I don't know. On and on. There's a lot of privacy issues there that we're really not aware of in terms of control. So yeah, being able to turn it off is the third thing.
Right.
And there's probably a fourth or fifth thing too, but these guys don't.
So do you think government should regulate that, or should corporations do it from front?
Government's
Right.
too clueless to regulate. Actually, the Bitcoin guys said something really smart. They said, you know, we're trying to be really aggressive on looking up on the anti-terrorist list, using face detection at the ATM to make sure that you're not money laundering, and doing all sorts of stuff that's really way above and beyond what the law is. And he said, we're doing that because we assume they're gonna regulate us, and we'd rather not be regulated. We'd rather regulate ourselves to be more ready, because if the government gets involved, I'm sorry, those people are not that as smart as the guy who's starting, who's that guy's name? Who's starting the new company over there?
Which one? Tony?
No,
Or Anthony?
the really smart guy.
Vitalik.
They're all very smart, of course.
The really smart one.
Yeah, Vitalik, yeah.
Yeah, if you ever meet him,
Yeah.
he's like, he's lit up a little different than the rest of us.
Yes, yeah, he writes for Bitcoin magazine as well, you can look him up. But, okay, so who's got some questions? Okay, go ahead.
Microsoft dead in 7 years, regardless of what the new CEO does?
Question is Microsoft
No.
dead in 7 years?
And the second part of the question is, what's the Achilles heel of Google?
What is the Achilles heel of
That's
Google?
more interesting than the Microsoft question, because Microsoft has something like $15 billion businesses. I was actually in a cab with a vice president of Microsoft, and we couldn't name them all. That's how many they have. You know, you start with Windows, Office, Xbox, SharePoint, Dynamics, SQL Server, and then you start struggling. That's 7. And they
Right.
have something like 15, so I'm only halfway there.
Right.
They are not going to die in 7 years, no matter what they do, right? But the more interesting question is, are they going to be interesting in 7 years? That's it. I don't know. They might
Well, you
be like
mentioned in the
IBM.
book,
IBM has more employees than Microsoft, and it's still a major, company.
was it Satoshi, the system that Microsoft is developing, the contextual system?
Yeah, they're trying. They just don't have the data. I mean, Google has so much data that Microsoft doesn't know anything about me anymore. I mean, Google has my email, they have my calendar, they have my search results, I have a Google Wallet, so they know a little bit about my purchasing, they know a little bit about my social, and on, right?
Well, David Knock moved from Yahoo to Microsoft's R&D group, and data was a big motive for it, and he had to talk with Google. But anyhow, that's it.
Microsoft has an extraordinary number of smart people, so you never underestimate them, and they have something like $60 billion in cash. You never underestimate them. The problem, the reason they've been boring since I left is they're
No coincidence.
no, they've been boring. They were boring when I was there too, but I figured it out and left. It's committee driven, and committees never do anything interesting. And
Walmart never struck me as a committee kind of guy.
It's totally a committee driven. Yeah, here's an example. I was sitting on the floor when Robert Fripp recorded the 4 sounds that begin when you start up Vista. You hear the 4 sounds. He recorded for 2 sessions, 8 hours apiece, so 16 hours. And I have one of the only CDs outside of Microsoft of the final 20 sounds. And they picked the most boring 20 sounds. Why? Because the committees, they have 800 plus lawyers, or they did when I worked there. And so you put the 20 sounds that you picked into the committee, and one guy says, I don't like the jazzy one. One girl says, I don't like the rock and roll one. And the lawyer says, that's not trademarkable. And by the time you end up with, yeah.
Okay, follow-up question was
Steve Jobs was not a committee. Steve Jobs literally was not a committee, and he understood the customer, and he understood where the future was going. Siri team told me that only Steve Jobs at Apple really understood the future of Siri, right? And he yelled at people who did not get the importance of Siri inside Apple. Steve Ballmer never hit me that way as a guy who got where the future is going and knew how to divine the future. He's a great salesperson and a great motivational person. When you're around him, you feel like, man, we could go to war right now, you know? And he's a great builder of the sales team, the sales process and the sales team, which is stuff you need when you build a company. You know, after you start, you know, getting to a certain range where you're selling the product, you need a sales team, and you need somebody like that to build your sales team and go and attack the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he's not the guy who's going to develop the next wearable computer.
Do you know the new guy?
Barely.
Okay.
Satya, yeah, but he came out of cloud computing, and he knows Microsoft, and he knows the enterprise side of Microsoft, which is 14 of those $15 billion
Right.
businesses, or 13 of those $1 billion businesses are probably on the enterprise side. So I think he's safe. He's good for Microsoft. He's not good for making Microsoft interesting. It'll be interesting to see if they can find somehow to make it interesting. I don't know.
Google's Achilles heel. Some people say.
I was one of the early tablet adapters before I even worked at Microsoft. I worked at NEC, and we had a 1/4-inch tablet that looked sort of like iPad back in 2002. And Microsoft just was visionary, did have a tablet before Steve Jobs, 9, 10, 12 years before Steve Jobs came out with the iPad. But couldn't get there because of the cultural problems of these committees and the infighting between groups and the lack of belief in the average rank and file that this new thing matters. Nobody at Microsoft carried around a tablet because they had 2 big Dell screens, and every programmer there it sat at a desk. Why would they carry a tablet and care about a tablet? And so there was just no energy inside the company among the then 50,000 employees to care about the tablet, and the tablet just never got improved. And then there was strategy taxes. Like if I walked into Ballmer's office in 2006 and said, this tablet thing is just sucking. It's just not happening. We're only selling $1 million a year. It needs to be, we need one that's $500 or less. And that means we're probably gonna need to get rid of the camera in the tablet. Steve Jobs shipped the first iPad, did not have a camera. Probably would have looked at me like, what are you smoking, Scoble? And then I would say, our programmers are just not all that good anymore. And they don't know how to write multitasking code that'll be battery efficient. So we need to get rid of multitasking. The iPad did not have multitasking. We need to go to our best distribution partner, Best Buy, and tell them to take a fucking flying leap. I would have been fired by that point, right? Because that would never have happened at Microsoft. But Steve Jobs fired Best Buy and built his own stores. When everybody in the press said building a store for Apple's stupid because Gateway
Gateway
tried
killed themselves.
Gateway tried that. Dell tried a few stores. Nobody could figure out how to do a store, but Steve Jobs figured it out, right? We need a completely different UI, and I knew this because I worked in support for a day, and I struggled to help a lady drag an icon across the screen for half an hour. So, Steve Ballmer, we need to get rid of the UI. We need to get rid of menus, we need to get rid of icons, we need to get rid of the file system, and we need to come up with a whole new system, new UI, not Windows, no start button, no menus, because it's touch, and people it's not very accurate, so it needs to be crude, and nobody drags an icon across the screen or goes into a file system. I would have gotten fired for that.
And that is Google's Achilles heel.
Well, Google on Glass is having some of the same problems, right? If I told them, you gotta fire the office team. Yeah. He would have said, now really get out of my office before I kill you, right? Because Steve Jobs told his own office team, no, your apps are not gonna ship on iPad. We're gonna make everybody in the world write new apps for this iPad. iOS is not OS 10, OS X, right? So completely different UI, completely different.
So are you saying that the key is to be ready to completely disrupt your own business?
The key is to pay attention to your customers and make your customers' lives brilliant. So the Google Glass, right, I really love the Google Glass. It is the future. The wearable computer, I'm very convinced in 10 years, almost all of us are going to be wearing something on our face, right? But take a picture. It doesn't go anywhere. So if I'm a journalist taking a picture in a war zone, I want to use Google Glass for that kind of stuff, right? But it doesn't go anywhere. I have to share it to Google+. I can't share it yet to Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or anywhere else. And even if I could, there's no keyboard. So what am I? I'm going to share from here straight to Facebook or to Instagram? No. I want it to go straight to the phone and have an UI where I can crop it and brighten it and do all the fun stuff we can do with all the apps on our phones, and then push it from the phone up to Facebook or Instagram or whatever. Not built yet, right? There's no store yet. So app developers are showing me some cool stuff. Like a kid built a game where aliens fly from the ceiling, and you shoot them by looking at them, because it's the first consumer electronics gadget that knows where you're looking, where your head is aimed, right? So the sensors are firing as you're looking around, and it's really cool. But somebody spent 2 hours on my Google Glass and could not get their app on my glass. So that means that developers are hamstrung right now until that gets fixed. And you go on and on. There's just all these things that are just not nice.
Let's see the customer.
Yeah.
Go ahead, you have a question?
So back to the figure of privacy. What are your thoughts on black phone? And do you think it's part of a growing trend of consuming products to protect privacy?
Black phone.
So this is, I've been doing so many talks and traveling, and I just barely read it on TechMeme. It's a new phone that protects your privacy.
Yeah,
and,
essentially just has like a private OS based on it.
yeah, and so how does it keep this new always surveilled world from happening? Does it do that, or does it?
I'm not entirely sure of all the
Yeah.
details. I'm just
Because there's ways to protect your email, like Silent Circle really encrypts your email and your
That's what it is.
communications.
It's Silent Circle.
Oh, it's Silent Circle.
Pre-installed on Android phone. It's junk.
Yeah.
like just like the concept, not necessarily the product.
I'll be crude. I don't think the world cares about privacy that much. It'll be interesting to see if it sells. Because if it sells, that means the world cares about the privacy, right? I really don't think, outside of the audience that is very passionate about privacy, which is a very small number of people, percentage-wise, I don't think most people care. I know that most people don't care, because how many of you have a lock screen on your phones? Don't admit it. Okay, yeah, go ahead and admit it. Half of you don't have a lock screen on your phones. You do not care about privacy if you don't have a lock screen on your phone. So I don't think the world cares about privacy, and I don't think products that their main selling proposition is that this keeps your email private are going to sell. That's just my answer.
How many people care about privacy? Put up your hand.
Yeah, but you don't have lock screens on your phones.
How many people have walked through the streets of Paris and think that he's right?
I don't know. If it sells, then I'll take my wish back. You know.
Go ahead.
How many of you are going to buy a phone like that is deeply private and get rid of Gmail, get rid of Facebook, and use a Silent Circle?
I think people would buy a cheap phone like that and have a second phone. Go ahead.
Yeah.
You're saying that's sort of the risk going through your garbage. So I guess my question is, how much do you think our psychology is driving technology? How much do you think technology is driving our psychology?
That's actually a good question. Gary Vaynerchuk and I gave a back-to-back talk, and I loved it because I got to geek out and talk about the low-energy Bluetooth radios and the sensors and all that. And then he gave a talk that companies are going to have to hire people with high emotional intelligence to figure out how to do it without freaking people out, you know. And he said, you know, he actually said, I wrote a database for my wines. He owns a wine store in New York that sells 75 million a year of wines, big wine store. And he wrote a database that tracks everybody who tweets at him. So if you do at Vaynerchuk or at Wine Library TV, he has a database. Because That's great. That's something I never expected when I was growing up to have. And it really helps me understand my customers better and understand the world that is interacting with my brand and me better. But now what do I do with that? That's emotional intelligence. How do I talk back to people without freaking them out, you know, and help them have a better experience? And so I like that dual approach. Yeah, you have to be a geek, you have to have a geek on your team who really understands the technology and how to make, you know, these sensors work properly. And then you have to have somebody on your team who really understands human beings, and they're often they're not the same person as you know. Right?
Which one is Vitaly?
The geek. The geek.
Go ahead, Ruslan.
IBM Bill Watson for playing Jeopardy, but now trained to be doctor. Would you prefer to go to Watson or GE?
So let me just repeat it for everybody. So the question is, Watson, which is IBM's AI computer, supercomputer, wins at chess, now is being applied for medical purposes. Do you want him to be your doctor?
Health is about to radically change because of these sensor packs. You know, we're going to know that you're having a heart attack eventually before you have one, so you're going to have a much better outcome because you can calmly go to the hospital and say, hey, we're going to have a heart attack tomorrow. Can you do something about that? It's a lot better than having one and lying on the floor, twitching in pain and not being able to do much about it, right? And I've had friends who died from heart attacks, and other friends who've had quad heart bypass. And it's the earlier you can treat something, the better the outcome, right? And same thing with cancer. If you wait until the cancer's metastasized and gone through your body, sorry, see you later, have a nice day. But if you catch it when it's really early, you can do a lot more, right? And so we're going to have sensors that are going to tell us stuff like that. We're going to have sensors that help us change our health. My wife lost 40 pounds with a Fitbit, right? And so, and that's the geeky side. The other geeky side is the DNA side, and the ability to send in to get your DNA sequenced and look at it and find abnormalities in your DNA, and then reprogram yourself. That's the weird shit that I way over my pay grade. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot. MIT Media Lab. I was just talking with Kevin Slavik, who works at MIT Media Lab, and he said that's the really cool stuff at MIT Media Lab right now. It's not the databases.
At MIT Media Lab,
Yeah,
which is pretty interesting,
They're
right?
doing
So-
really crazy stuff with DNA and programming of DNA and biotechnologies that study your bio.
So Watson or your own family dog?
You know, give me 10 years, I think the computer is going to be a lot more accurate. If you're going for surgery already, they're using robotic surgery. You know, my hands shake, so you don't want me operating on your brain, but they're already doing MRI brain surgery and figuring out, if you have Parkinson's, by the way, so your hands are shaking like this, and you can't control your hands, this is not fun, right?
No.
They take you into an MRI, the best MRI around, and they image your brain and find the piece of your brain that's causing this, and they put a thing into your brain and turn on a little electric bolt, and your hand stops. There's videos up on YouTube. It's really remarkable. But I met the brain surgeon who does this, and soon I'm going to have a robot that's going to do that, and it's going to be far more accurate than my human mind is at putting that stent in your.
Yeah.
And that means there's less consequences. You know, right now it's $150,000 for that surgery, and there's consequences because you're tearing through brain matter that does other stuff, right?
Yeah.
So if you can do that a little bit better with a robot. So yeah, we're going to more and more more and more computer stuff. I interviewed the surgeon at Stanford, a heart surgeon. He said everything I learned in medical school 30 years ago is completely obsolete, and he uses Hippocrates on his iPhone to study this. When you come in, you have lung cancer. He's going to look your symptoms up on Hippocrates to see the latest science about that, right? And he said this is flattening the world of medicine because now it's no longer do you have to see the world's best specialist at something because they all have the same knowledge all in real time. and so medicine is, he said medicine's radically changing, and it's flattening the great medicine from Stanford out to the third world, right?
Mhm.
A guy who sees a lung condition can at least try to do something because he has the information that
Yeah.
he didn't have before.
Exactly. Having lost my mother to cancer, I'm going to go with Watson if I have the shot, because not despite the best intentions of everybody, that distribution of information is just a disaster. Go ahead up there.
I think there's a lot of like cool companies, crazy technology and analytics and data to help businesses, especially local businesses, service professionals, stuff like that. The biggest challenge that I've seen is adoption. It's like you can have something wicked, but people either don't adopt it because they're lazy, they're stubborn, or they think, how much really is this going to benefit me? At the end of the day, what is my revenue? And if you're not helping get me more revenue, you're just telling me more, do I care? So what have you seen as best practices that businesses overcome that?
I remember telling people about Twitter at conferences and on my blog, and over I heard, why do I want to know what Kevin Rose had for lunch, or this seems like the lamest thing I've ever seen,
But to be fair, distribution for a social app is way different than a piece of hardware.
Yeah, but you go, I interviewed Doug Engelbart and Brendan DeMouse, and when you interview him toward the end of his life, he was a frustrated man. He died last year. And I said, what's behind your angst, your anger? And he goes, because people just couldn't get what I was showing them. I don't know. We just got to get better at explaining the advantages of.
Have you know any like specific campaigns or things that businesses have done that have really helped to educate and get more people to
No, but I just visited Radiant Six's office in St. John. When they first came out, nobody understood about social media listening, and now that Salesforce is rocking and rolling with that, right? It just takes time for people to see, that there's a new world, and see that it's important, and see that there's money to be made in this new world. So I would study the people who have pushed new ideas. Look at Uber. Uber is just mind-blowing to me. And that company is, 3 or 4 years old? And when I spoke in Sydney and I spoke in Paris, most of the audiences have used it. It's like...
Everybody here has got a free ride from Uber tonight, by the way. Did you get the email?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
See?
There's an email that
They
came
built
out.
a world brand in 3 years. That's just mind-blowing. So I would study that. How did that happen? Anyways.
Go ahead.
I don't have the answer.
By
If
the
I had
way,
the
he
answer,
didn't know that you get a free ride
If
from Uber.
I had the answer, actually Tap and Go is one of the brilliant ones, right? Tap and Go is for college kids today. Started like Facebook. Facebook started with Harvard, then went to colleges, then went big. They're for colleges right now. And if you go to a place that doesn't have a Tap and Go computer, you still tap and go, and that tells his salespeople, it prioritizes who to go call on tomorrow. And he's building a virus that's growing across New York. And so 6 years from now, he's going to have New York covered with those Tap and Go machines, and everybody's going to be addicted to Tap and Go. I think that's why the investors give him $5 million, because it's like, if he executes, he's going to be a billionaire. But it takes time. GoPro started right by my house, and for a long time people said, why do the world need a waterproof camera? And it took, it's like a doubling penny, He sold a few cameras the first year, and then a little bit more, and then, it kept doubling. And then eventually the doubling effect got real interesting. And now it's like he's a billionaire in 10 years, right?
So speaking of billionaires, you've met a lot of them, like when they're just sort of walking up to you at a conference.
Yeah.
So who was sort of the coolest, out of the gate before,
I don't know that.
or they,
certain
that you
people-
wanted to succeed?
That's interesting. The guys who showed me Siri, I said you're going to get bought. And I had no idea they'd get bought in 2 weeks by Steve Jobs, but I said this is strategic to the mobile industry, and this is cool, and I wanted that to continue. And actually, they're frustrated, and I'm frustrated because it's sort of stopped.
Mhm.
and it shouldn't have stopped,
Mhm.
right? So there's gonna be another series, and there's a bunch of people in play for that who are trying to push the world of assistance on, but Apple has stopped, right? Steve Jobs is gone.
And you've made a lot of predictions, and a lot of them are awesome and futuristic
And I
and
forget-
bang on.
I forget my failures.
Isn't? What about Highlight?
Yeah.
But Highlight, I don't know. I mean, you described everything about Highlight, but you didn't mention Highlight.
I mentioned it once because
Okay.
they're using the low energy beacons.
Besides that, name one other.
Highlight, I didn't realize had a chat room problem, and there's another one announced yesterday. What's the name of it? I'm sorry. I put it on Facebook last night, and I'm trying. I just don't know that it answers the right question yet. And Highlight has a chat room problem. It was really interesting the first month. I met the head of Al Jazeera on it. I had like the first month at South by Southwest 2 years ago, I had 400 people that I highlighted, and they were all incredible. The social media head of the White House, the head of the BBC. I'm really interesting people, and I was like, man, this is cool. But then as more people got on the system, the utility went down. I call that the chat room problem. It's happened to every single chat room I've ever been a part of, from my BBS on. And so chat rooms start really interesting. Like if we start
Twitter was like that actually at first too.
Yeah, but Twitter's not a chat room. Twitter, I can protect myself a little bit from this chat. So where I was going with the chat room, let's say we start a chat room. It's really interesting. We're talking about stuff. We have a common experience, and then we invite him in. It's still pretty interesting. And then we start inviting more people in, but it starts slowing down because the new people, even if they're smart, don't have the shared experience that the three of us have, right? And I remember being in a net meeting group, and it was really fun for about 6 months. Because we were exploring this new world, we were talking to people. I remember talking to a Russian general. I mean, this was in 1996. It's mind blowing, right? And but then waves of new people came in, and even though they're smart, they asked the same questions we answered 6 months before, and that was fun for a couple waves. But after answering the same question 100 times, you get really bored and you want to go on with your life. And then the bad actors came in, the trolls came in, because the group was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then the spammers came in and really destroyed the group. And that's the chat room problem. And Highlight is a chat room at some level. Its utility is going down as new people get on it, and I don't know how to solve that. So.
Okay, how many people here came that they wanted to get something on the table tonight? They wanted to ask a question. They really need to ask this question. It's a burning question. Put your hand up way up high because we've got about 10, 15 more minutes. I want to try to we'll go fast. Go.
So many of these companies that we talk about that are using our data that we have to trust, their innovation is powered by advertising as a primary revenue driver. Does that have to change? And do you see Google being an advertising company in 10 years?
Google is not an advertising company in my mind. Google is an intent satisfaction company in my mind. And Google Glass has an affordance of a new world where I tell it what I want and the world delivers it to me. Uber is a great example. I want a ride, click, and a ride comes to me. I want the entire world to be like Uber. I want to say right now, bring me a beer. And I'll pay. You got a beer? That's even better, right? But I want to say technological, not correct. But I want to be sitting in a park somewhere and going, man, I'd like a beer, or I'd like a Coke, or I'd like a sandwich, or I'd like a whatever. And I want to come, and I'll pay, just like with Uber, I'm paying $10 more a ride, or whatever it is, more a ride. I'll pay $5, $10, maybe even $15 more for a beer that comes to me, because I don't have to go wait in a line, I don't have to walk across the street, I don't have to do stuff. It comes to me. And so Google Glass has that affordance. Okay, Glass, bring me a beer, and it knows my favorite brands, or it will. It knows what's possible, right? And then advertising is appropriate. First of all, they can collect $5 from me for the delivery of the beer. Then they can say, okay, we know you like Moosehead. How about XYZ new brand that you don't know yet? We'll give you a free one of those because we're trying to change your brand preferences. And, Kraft food executives told me they spent $34 on acquiring a new customer. right? So could a beer company deliver a free beer to me? Yes, they could.
Right.
If I become a new customer of theirs, you know.
And is,
that's
do
less-
you think WhatsApp acquisition is also kind of a look down, you know, well, if people are willing to pay $1 a year and they're willing to accept increases over 3 years, I mean, why don't I do that?
Yeah, that's a new business model, right? You know, you get 400 million people paying $1.
That's
I like that kind of
that's a nice
business.
hit, right?
I'd like a business like that.
Go ahead.
Not to mention, I wouldn't mind selling to Mark Zuckerberg for $16 billion, right?
I'd like to know what you think of the industrial internet, how that's going to turn out. Are there any players right now that see that?
The industrial internet and how it's trending, major players.
I know Union Pacific put sensors underneath the rails, and they're getting 40 million hits a day of data off of the train rails. I just talked to the CEO of Irving Oil. He's putting sensors on all his refineries to make them more efficient and keep downtime. By the way, his
It's a huge topic in Canada right now. With there was a major explosion in Quebec where, you know, it took out half a town basically.
yeah. His question to me was, how do I learn my competitor, or how do I learn the spot oil price is going to change? And he said he knows analysts have bought satellite time to watch his refinery.
Right.
Because if he has unplanned downtime, the refinery either blows up like that, or it gets cool because it turns off. And the analysts want to know that so that they can, arbitrage prices, so they can go and buy prices or
Like
sell.
taking photos of Walmart parking lots. They're doing that as well.
Yeah, so that's sort of an industrial internet. But General Electric talks about it with sensors on wingtips and jet planes and turbines. I'm not that into it, other than just these crude examples. We have a few others in the book. I don't know. Does anybody here? Is anybody working on Internet of Things inside really massive corporations? Or?
GE's got a huge plan for it. Jeff Emmett has actually said he'd support these.
What was that name?
Jeff Emmett,
Oh, right,
the
yeah.
CEO of GE has said he'd support startups in the ecosystem.
Yeah.
Cisco's behind it. In Europe, they call it Industry 4.0, and Siemens is back starting. They
Yeah.
raised $100 million.
Yeah, actually, I forgot about Siemens. I had dinner with the head of R&D at Siemens on Tuesday. They're using it to study the power grid, so they're building predictive systems to understand the power load that's going to happen tomorrow. Because if they know the load's going to spike tomorrow, then they need to do stuff. The system needs to do stuff to get that power to you or protect itself from demands. And one of the key findings he told me, he said when they were building their contextual system for the data grid, they thought they would need 2 years of data to make it more accurate. And in their test, it actually proved that theory proved false. They said the most accurate their system got was with 3 months of data. And I asked him, why is that? And he goes, we think it's because the market conditions change, and if you have too much data, it throws off the predictive models a little bit. And I thought that was really an interesting insight. So if you're building a predictive startup, like a Google Now or something, you might have a theory like that, hey, we need more data, and actually it might turn out to be true that we need less data to be just as accurate. So, which saves you on cloud computing bills and makes your systems work faster, right? You have less data to go through. So test your theories. If you have a
Go
theory,
ahead.
test it.
Yeah, I have been working on developing the technology for the last 5 years, and I think that would be the next technology where my technology that allows the people to create their own social network, blog, website, and their online application for free, and this take them only 30 seconds. So, but my question to you is, I don't know where to get the user to use them. I found the website, but actually I don't know how to get the user to use them.
This is an interesting question. If you're an entrepreneur heading into a crowded space, and startup social networks are very crowded space. I just saw a social network. Well, we saw Secret announced, right, where you could have a social network that's all about secrets and being sort of anonymous, right?
There's a bunch out of Canada.
Oh, there's so many social networks. Very crowded space. I'm not adverse to going into crowded spaces, but you better have something that I get in 20 seconds about why it's mind-blowing. Google was the 17th search engine, right? But in 30 seconds, I remember the day they showed me Google and pitched it to me. And it took one search.
Who showed you Google?
I forget the guy's name, but it was a team that came out to the magazine I was working at.
Okay.
And they said, do one search. Do your favorite search. I ran a net meeting website. And Alta Vista had my site, #1, because I had 300,000 hits a month. A porn site, #2. And my friend's website, which was second best site, #3. That was Alta Vista. Yahoo never listed my website. And I had the #1 website. I knew I could prove it. But #1
Right.
net meeting site, they never listened. That's why I never liked Yahoo. I still don't like Yahoo. I'm an egotistical bastard. Sorry, you don't listen to my website. I'm gonna never give you credit for that. And Google, #1, #2, no porn. And I said, this rocks. How did this happen? And then we spent an hour talking about the technology and
Right.
how the page rank works and all that.
Right. Did you get your answer?
I don't know that I have an
So in
answer.
other words, I think the answer is in that 30 seconds, it takes 30 seconds to set up.
Yeah.
They gotta go.
Here's
Go
the real
ahead.
answer though. ICQ launched November 1st, 1996. So before Twitter, before Facebook, before all this stuff, they had 40 users. So the trick is find 40 really great users. And that's not that hard. There's 40 people here.
What's your website?
Yeah, what's your website? That's how you get users.
Kasame.com. It stands for social media. It's start with a PESOME.com.
Okay.
Okay.
So you start with 40 users. In 6 weeks, they had 160,000 users because it spread virally because it was something that people got and started telling their friends about.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to have that 10x. If you're going into a crowded space like travel, like social networks, like if you tell me you have a photo sharing site, I actually call these sleep words. So they're words when I hear them in a press release, I go, and like when I hear social network, so you got to wake me up, and it better be fast. If you can wake me up in 30 seconds and show me that this is mind-blowing, it has a 10x, it has a real legitimate breakthrough, then let's go. I want to know. Okay?
Now,
Where do you see email going?
Nowhere. It's I've been playing with all I hate email. I answered 86 emails on the plane here, and 60, and my email box was clean, and I already have 60 as of the,
That's
hour
gotta
ago.
be stressful.
And so, it causes me stress. I solved that by putting an out-of-office message saying I won't answer your email in 2 minutes. And that gives me the spiritual,
but you answer pretty much all your email.
I try, but I don't answer it all. But it gives me the mental capacity not to worry about it. If I don't answer it,
Yeah.
well, I told you I wasn't going to answer it, so it's cool. The filtering in Gmail is really pretty good. But it still sucks. I could not do what I do without Gmail's filters. It throws somewhere around 300 emails into promotional folder a day on my account, because my account's public and it's everywhere.
Right.
And I'm on every PR mailing list ever known to mankind, so I get lots of PR. My spam filter gets 1,000 emails a day. My wife only gets like 2 spams a day. Right? My account gets 1,000 because it's been grabbed by every system out there known to mankind. But if I didn't have those filters, there's no way I could do email. So the filtering is really, and that's contextual. It's starting to learn who I am and what, and I train it. I spend a lot of time training. By the way, did you know, I met the guy who was building these filters, or the team on a plane. I spent 8 hours with him. And did you know that we all have a score underneath on Gmail based on how good we're training the spam filter? And how good we're training these filters?
So,
There are people that are selected as modelers for the filtering system for everybody else.
the crowd is actually,
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
if
that
I
makes
put
sense.
something in promotional and everybody else takes it out of promotional and puts it in inbox or puts it in updates, the crowd told the system that I'm bad at doing this.
Right.
And so my score goes down, and then my influence over the system goes down. If I'm getting better and better at it, then I actually have more power over the system. And if I put something in promotional, then it puts it in promotional for all.
So is that on this side of the freaky line or that side of the freaky
No,
line?
but it's how these new filters work. The Facebook
Yeah.
newsfeed, the newsfeed is really interesting, and everybody complains about it 'cause it sucks sometimes. But if I, let's say you all follow me or friends with me, and I put an item on Facebook, it'll only send to 4 people here, and I don't know who the 4 are. It's random. And what the first 4 people do in real time will affect how many other people will get. So if all 4 of those share my item, share is much more important than commenting or liking. So if you all share it, it'll go to, let's say, 6/10 of you. And then if all of those people share it again, it'll go to 100%. This is why you see some things go to 20,000 likes, like, because that item that they put on the table to those original people was so emotional and so interesting to share that the algorithm just let it go. And I love studying filtering because it's how the world works. Out at Amazon, right? How do you all buy books, right? How many people don't buy a book on Amazon? Yeah. This is why I did not care.
Indigo, she's.
That's
Yeah.
local.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but this is why our book is published by Amazon. You can buy it on
Yeah.
Audible, is Amazon, Kindle, Amazon, and
Yeah.
paper is printed by Amazon. I don't care about anything else anymore. And the book publishers, so some of my friends have written better books than I have, books on Apple and Twitter and all sorts of cool stuff, and they have only 40 reviews. I have 200 reviews. Well, having 200 reviews at 4.8 stars means that Amazon puts you higher on lots of things and helps sell your book. It's the new end cap. And if you don't do that work to make that happen, I sent out 800 copies of my book for free to lots of people in the world to get reviews on the first day because I knew it was important to selling the book. And the book publishers don't do this. They don't care about
anybody. Yeah.
No, they don't care about Amazon because their entire business was built on serving Barnes and Noble and all the
Right,
booksellers,
right.
the old school booksellers.
Right.
But we don't buy books that way anymore.
Okay, 2 more questions. Go ahead.
So, 3D printing for consumers is kind of in the living dead zone at the moment.
Yeah.
Maybe even gone all the way. What's the 2D cloud applications that might bring it back to lineup?
Oh, that's a tough one. You talked to Bree Pettis, who started MakerBot. The problem is that the materials that you can do are a little crude. So in San Francisco, we have this tech shop, which is a makerspace, they call it. And they have 3D printers, and that's a big part of it. So the Square credit card reader was designed at Tech Shop on the 3D printer. But sometimes you also need to do maybe a 6-axis milling machine to make a product. I met a guy who's making camera mounts, and some of it is 3D printed, and right now, 3D printing is sort of like the Apple II was in 1977. It was good for the enthusiast who wanted to play with something new, but we all did. When I got my Apple II in junior high, it had no software, it had a cassette tape drive, and it cost $2,000, right? So most people in the world didn't see what this was good for, and didn't. Even Apple, right? As Steve Wozniak told me, he wanted to work for HP forever. He didn't want to start a company. He wanted HP. He offered HP twice to sell and market the Apple products, the personal computer products that he and Steve Jobs were coming up with, and they refused because they didn't see the market in it. And it's 3D printers in that space right now. It needs to get better quality. It needs to get cheaper, and it needs to get to the place where it does stuff. Park, by the way, showed me a prototype inkjet printer that prints circuitry on it very cheaply on any surface. So if you can start doing that inside a piece of plastic, wow, that's cool. So we might just need to wait for Moore's Law to kick over a few times. And this is something about building a company too. If you talk to the guys who built Pixar, the film company, they knew for 20 years, when he started his career in college, he knew that a digital film was awesome. You know, back in the 1960s. But they didn't have computer power to do a digital film. And he needed to wait for Moore's Law to flip 20 times before he could make Toy Story. They actually had a film right before Toy Story that got killed because it just wasn't good enough. They needed to wait for Moore's Law to kick over one more time. And that's why Steve Jobs ended up with the company. Because they needed more equity to wait. And the timing of building a product means you have to give up equity to get cash to survive until it's ready. And so timing on some of these companies, and 3D printing is sort of like that. It's like, we need a little bit more, you know, we need another thing. You know, building little plastic things just isn't good enough to get consumers to spend $1,500 on a printer, right? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious, so disclaimer first. It's kind of funny to see the report of your book. I happen to work for this company, just a coincidence. So I'm curious, like when you talk about the age of contact and Internet of Things, you talk about introducing a ton of data at the individual contact level. I guess I work in the B2B space, but I'm interested in B2C as well. Like how do we turn all that data into something that's, like, how do companies sort of like effectively manage that data, consume it, and then turn it into something that they can communicate or they can action on, right? Because I think I work with a lot of front office staff, but there's a lot of automation beyond that front office even does.
There's a lot of opportunity here. I know the data scientist at Nordstrom's, and she's playing with real-time. She's using Amazon's database system, and she's using Node.js and some other technology. These are really geeky, early, bleeding-edge technologies, and she's trying to do real-time recommendations, sort of like Amazon does for our book. You know, when you buy something, it recommends other things. And that's sort of the bleeding edge right now. Every business is going to need to study everything about everything, so they're going to need a Hadoop cluster or something like it. And they're going to need machine learning experts or a system that was built for them to see pattern in data. And that's opportunities for all of us, because every company is going to need a new data system, right? And every company is going to need machine learning experts. And there are not enough of those in the world. 2 years ago, you had to have a geek on your staff to run your Hadoop cluster and build it. Now it's starting to be productized and getting easier, and companies are really working on making it simpler to bring it down. But it's a long road. This trend is going to be a decade-long trend. It's not all going to happen tomorrow morning, right? And the guy who owns Irving Oil, right? He owns 600 or 900 retail stores or retail outlets, because he has many stores in those outlets. And he's building a loyalty card to study his customers as they go around town, and now he's building partnerships with other businesses to do. He's a big oil guy, right? But he needs more machine learning guys or girls, and more data center space. I just talked to Bell Atlantic, they're just opening a new data center in
Bell Canada?
Yeah, you know,
Or Bell Atlantic.
yeah, there's a lot of demand for data storage space, you know, and it's not going to stop. Not until I can go up to a business person and say, do you know this or about this? And if they say, yeah, we have a sensor on that, then, and I can't come up with something that they're not studying, then I know they're done. But how many businesses know everything about everything like the way Uber does? And even Uber is like, yeah, we don't know everything about everything. Okay, we know where you are. We know the driver. We know the rating of the driver every time he picks you up. By the way, if you barf in a car and destroy a car, they rate you as well, and so you won't get picked up anymore if you are a bad customer.
You don't mean like me, you mean like...
You know, South by Southwest is coming up. You know? Got to be careful. because your customer score might go down, and then all of a
Right.
sudden you're not getting picked up for rides anymore. It's cold out there right now. You want to be picked up, right? Yeah, if you're, I don't know where I'm going with that. If you're not studying everything about everything, you are going to feel that demand on your business because your competitor is going to do it.
Yeah.
You know, look at all the taxi companies now that are partnering with Flywheel to compete with Uber. And why? Because they're being disrupted by Uber and by other systems.
Okay, well, we are running a little over time, and I thank you for your questions. I'm going to take the liberty of the last question. A lot of folks who aren't spending their days in San Francisco, in Silicon Valley, look at a deal like WhatsApp, $19 billion. Look at a deal like Nest, and they say, "Man, is this a loss of perspective?" So that's the first part of the question, I guess. Is there a bubble? Is there a loss of perspective? And the second part of the question is, you're a guy who lives there, who spends all of your waking hours basically interfacing with the most exciting what's new.
All over the world, not just in the
Yeah. But so how do you keep your sort of antenna straight to be able to kind of not lose perspective?
I follow a lot of you on Twitter, and every night I try to watch that for an hour and just see what you're talking about. I read tech meme religiously. I have 5,000 friends on Facebook that feed me stuff, and I follow another 4,000 people that feed me stuff, and I have 5,200 likes, mostly about startups that feed me stuff. So I have pretty good inbound. If the world starts changing, I know it pretty quickly. And then I travel a lot, so I like today I sat next to a veterinarian who runs who has a milk farm, a dairy farm, and I like talking to people, and so that keeps me sort of in the real world too. And then now I have the opportunity to speak to a lot of people, and so they'll, if I got something wrong, somebody will nail me in the back. Or this guy over here knows more about wireless Bluetooth low energy than anybody I've met, right? So if I said something wrong, he's going to go, hey,
Yeah, so
fix
you
it.
get tuned up quick.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, thank you.
But WhatsApp is
Yeah.
$40 per customer was the cost.
Right.
Don't look at the don't look at the figure, because the figure is mind blowing.
Right.
Those
But- which is
Kraft spends $34 per customer to acquire a customer. So $40 is not that unrational.
No.
And Instagram was $116 per customer. Now it's lower now because it grew so fast. But at the day that they bought it was 116. And somebody wrote a whole chart of acquisition prices per user, and WhatsApp is actually not that high.
Mhm.
So the answer is that there isn't a bubble, or that these are rational decisions.
Nest.
Okay.
Nest has a ton of really bright Apple people, and Google wants to know your intent. And part of your intent is turn down the heat. And part of your intent is knowing when you're home. Because if you say, I want a pizza, and you're at home, that's different than if you're in the park, right?
Yeah.
And if it can figure out other things about your home, like how many people are there right now, that changes when you say, I want a pizza. You work for Bill Gates, right? Yeah. You guys were always ahead. I had meetings with Bill, and he knew what was coming, right? He wasn't able to execute it very well sometimes, but
He did okay.
yeah, I don't think he's really worrying too
Yeah,
much, right now.
Well, listen, thank you very much. Listen, he was going to New Brunswick when we made the request. He's got to go to D.C., Washington for another speaking engagement. Made a very special effort to come here. This isn't a paid speaking engagement, so, and we've been running him off his feet. As soon as he got off the plane, he's already got 3 meetings. Tomorrow, 3 meetings, and I was just 24 hours of power. So thank you very much for coming.